survey of the Old Testament, I asked Patrick if we still had any of those paper maps. And he said he would look, but I don't see them. There's nothing hidden behind there, is there?
No.
No. Okay. We'll continue to work on that.
It might be in their closet in our office.
He thought they were over in the basement in his house. So anyway, we'll find a way to, because illustrate that hopefully one of these days, because we're working on a geographical question right now. We're in the book of Judges, near to the end, and we pass out questions, and I don't think I've got any left. So anyway, we're almost done. We looked at the judges from Othniel to Samson. And then we find that we're not done with the book of Judges because there's some more chapters there. And you wonder why those chapters are there in the book of Judges, because they really don't pertain to judges. Judges are those men and women who've been called by God to be leaders among his people. And as the book unfolds, we see that the judges are those who are leaders at a time when the nation really needs a leader, although it's not a nation. It's a confederation of tribes. But we find that the people drift into idolatry. Then after a while, sometimes a few years, sometimes a lot of years, they return to God by saying, wonder why this has happened to us. Maybe it's because we've drifted away from God. And so they start to come back. And God, in his mercy, doesn't say, well, I'm just going to forget you guys. He, in his mercy, raises a leader. And then they get back in God's good graces for a while. But then the process seems to be continuing. Anyway, that's what we've seen in Judges. But then we get into these latter chapters, such as chapter 18. So that's where we are. And we talked about the chapters 17 and 18 go together. It's an odd story about a man who was had some idols in his house, and he hired a Levite to be a priest. None of these things were good. This is in chapter 17 of Judges. All kinds of violations of the law here. You don't hire priests, and anyway, you don't worship idols. But finally, a group of people from the tribe of Dan come along and hire this Levite away from the house where he was. And so he goes with them. The reason that they're going is, as we mentioned last time, when the promised land was given to the Israelites, but they had to work for it. Each of the tribes was given a geographical area within the promised land of Israel, or Palestine, or Canaan. And they were supposed to focus on that area, and that was where they were supposed to live. There were other tribes there. They were supposed to, with the help of God, drive them out. Come in. Was that Dan?
Dan.
Okay. Yeah, well,
It's turned away.
we'll find it. Anyway, so what's happened is the tribe of Dan is one of the 12 tribes of Israel. They were given a portion of land down close to where the Philistines were, or what we know today as the Gaza Strip, if you've been following the news. But they were unable to take that land. And so they became discouraged and are looking for some other land to occupy. Now, is this in accordance with God's will? No. He gave the people the land where they're supposed to live at. And they were supposed to be devoted to him and drive out the Canaanite tribes. But the Danites are looking elsewhere. That's what we do sometimes as servants of God. We know kind of what we should be doing to serve God, but it's hard sometimes, or it's inconvenience or inconvenient, and we look for an alternative. That's what they're doing. So I think, well, we'll read on into chapter 18. The thing that struck me, they go to the northern part of Israel, up by beyond the Sea of Galilee, and what we would call the Golden Heights today, but just west of that. That's why I wish we had our maps. Anyway, we ought to find a way to project our maps on the wall sometime. Anyway, we'll work on that. So they're up in the northern part of Israel, and they send spies. Just like, remember, when the Israelites were coming to the promised land, they sent spies out. And the spies, 10 of them said, this is too hard. We can't do it. And God said, wait, that's not the right answer, because with my help, you could do it. Joshua and Caleb had the right answer. So what struck me, when the Dan people came back and reported what they found in the northern part of Israel, this is in verse 9 of chapter 18 of Judges, they answered, come on, let's attack them. We've seen that the land is very good. Aren't you going to do something? Don't hesitate to go there and take it over. And so that's the report that should have been given when the original 12 spies were sent out. So I find that interesting. They're going where they really shouldn't go and given a report, yeah, we can do this. But why? Most people say these 5 chapters at the end of Judges are not really taught in Sunday school. You know, in the Sunday school, they talk about the lessons of Deborah and Gideon and what you can learn from Samson and Jephthah and so on. But these chapters aren't taught that much in Sunday school. But in my house, this chapter was taught, and for this reason, as we read on in chapter 18, verse 10. Here's another reason they thought they could take this land in the northern part of Israel. When you get there, you will find an unsuspecting people and a spacious land that God has put into your hands, a land that lacks nothing whatever. Read back up with me, let's see, in verse 7 and 8. They came to Laish, where they saw that the people were living in safety, like the Sidonians, unsuspecting and secure. And since their land lacked nothing, they were prosperous. Also, they lived a long way from the Sidonians and they had no relationship with anybody else. Let's see. There's one other verse a little bit further down. No, that's about it.
Was this land that they're looking, was this occupied by another
Yes,
Jewish tribe, by
No.
another tribe?
not a Jewish tribe,
Oh, okay, so,
a Canaanite tribe.
okay,
That's the point here.
but it wasn't the one, it wasn't the area that they were supposed to.
No, it was far from. They were supposed to be kind of down south. This is up north. So what was the lesson here? The Danites. As you see it, but the point that was taught in my house was they lived a long way. They had no relationship with anybody else, unsuspecting people. And the point was, well, that's not a good way to live. Now, these were Canaanites. They didn't want to have anything to do with anybody else. The Sidonians, any of the other, so they were ripe for takeover by the Danite Israelites on the move. And so that's what was taught in my house. Don't live just by yourself. You're gonna need help. You're gonna need support in life. These people didn't want to have anything to do with anybody else. And so the Danites were able to take over. And that became the center of the Danite tribe up there north of the rest of the tribes. So
Samson's from there, anybody else?
What's that?
Samson's from there. Who else is from the tribe of Dan?
yeah, Samson.
No,
Well,
no, no.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
Anybody come to mind? I don't know if others. Anyway, he's the main one. So that's this chapter. That's the answer to this question. Why were the children of Dan able to defeat the people of Laish? Because they were living by themselves. They couldn't call on anybody for help. That's a terrible way to live, isn't it? If you need some help, I don't know anybody to call because I've never helped anybody myself, and that's not the way to live. So anyway, I think these two chapters are in the Bible for that reason, to show how the people of Dan moved to where they became, they centered their tribe. And it talks about this Levite and his gods. And anyway, they attacked them with their swords and burned down the city. There was no one to rescue them. Verse 28, that's what I was looking for. There was no one to rescue them because they lived a long way from Sidon and had no relationship with anybody else. The city was in a valley near Beth Rehob. The Danites rebuilt the city. They named it Dan. Not surprising. And the Danites for themselves idols. And that's not good. But they were there until the time of the captivity. And anyway, so that's the story of the Danites. It's interesting, we've pointed out before, in the book of Revelation, they talk about, they list the tribes of Israel as symbolizing God's people. But who's left out? They don't mention Dan in that list in Revelation. Why not? I mean, he's a son of Jacob, of tribe. Maybe it's because of this incident that they ignored God's law of where they were supposed to live and where they were supposed to be. Anyway, just a look at these chapters. Anything else? Oh, The land of Israel is described in many places in the Old Testament as extending from Dan to Beersheba, and in recognition of the fact that Dan becomes the northernmost part, Beersheba down in southern Judah is the southern part. Dan to Beersheba, you may have run across that in your study.
It was,
And this is why Dan is the top and Beersheba is the bottom when you look at it from north to south. Anyway, just a couple of trivia points from those two chapters. The next next three chapters, actually, 19, 20, and 21, are include a different story. It's about a Levite, starting in chapter 19. A Levite has a concubine, or a second-class wife, if you will. She runs away. And so he goes to get her back. He likes her. Anyway, and so they find, he goes to her father's house. There she is. This fellow and the father having a good time. So he stays a few days with the father, and she's going to come back with him. So they mix up with her and her father. And so the father and her, father says, stay over another day, and stay over another day. And he does, probably having a good time with wine and food and so on. Anyway, finally he gets on the way, but it's kind of late. And so he's not going to make it back to his hometown before dark. So he's on his way. He comes by the Jebusite city of Jerusalem. At that time, it's a Jebusite city. It has not been brought under the Israelites. So he said, I'm not going to stay there.
He's got the woman with him?
What's that? Yeah, he's got his concubine with him. He and the concubine are on their way back to his house up in Ephraim territory. And so then he comes into the land of Benjamin. And they decide, well, we'll stay at a Benjamin city. They ought to welcome us. Those are Israelites. And so he goes in, and he's in the kind of the central square of the city. And nobody's asking him to spend the night. There's no hotels. It was the tradition under the Jewish culture. If there was a stranger, somebody would invite him in to spend the night, give him a meal and so on, feed his donkey. But here it doesn't happen. So finally, a guy's coming in from the fields, and he says, come on to my house. Don't just stay out here in the middle of the street. So he goes in with this guy. But then as it happens, some roughhousing fellows from the city want to pull him out for purposes of sexual molestation. It's really what it is. And so it's a kind of a sad story. This is in chapter 19, verse 22. Some of the wicked men of the city surround the house, pounding on the door. They shouted to the old man who owned the house, bring out the man who came to your house so we can have sex with him. And it's kind of like when Lot was in Sodom. This is the type of thing that's displeasing to God. Anyway, so what are we going to do? This shows the nature of the time. No, my friends, don't be so vile. This is what the homeowner says, verse 23. Since this man is my guest, guest was supposed to be saying, don't be so vile. don't do this disgraceful thing. Look, here's my virgin daughter and his concubine. I will bring them out to you now, and you can use them and do to them whatever you wish. But to this man, don't do such a disgraceful thing. It kind of,
Alan, didn't something like this happen in,
Yeah, Lot offered his daughter.
Yeah. Lot offers his daughters
Yeah.
to these homosexuals or whatever we want to call them, predators. So it wasn't good there, and it's not good here. What happens is the men would not listen. The man takes his concubine and set her outside. They raped her and abused her throughout the night. At daybreak, she went back to the house. But as we read on, the master opened the door and she's dead. And so this creates an uproar. What does the man do? He cuts her body up into 12 pieces, sends a piece to each of the 12 tribes of Israel, and say, this is a terrible thing. This is something that doesn't happen in Israel. And so the result is they all band together and say, we've got to do something about this situation in the town of Gibeah in Benjamin, the area of Benjamin. So they get a whole bunch of guys together, an army of 400,000 men, believe it or not, which is a goodly number even in our day. So Benjamin, they go there and they say, okay, you guys send out the bad guys and let us punish them. But the people from Gibeah say, no, we're not going to do that. They should have surrendered those who were sinners and defused the situation. It's a type of a situation where kind of the first reaction, well, we're going to raise an army and start a war. The Benjamites raised their own army, 26,000. 400,000 from all the rest of Israel, 26,000 from Benjamin. Who's going to win? Who knows? Because we've seen some situations in the scriptures where Gideon, with a force of 300, defeated a force of 132,000. Anyway, so what happens is the people of Israel, they asked God, should we go up against the Benjamites? He said, yes, go up. And the Benjamites come out and kind of kill a few Israelites. And that, what makes them wonder? They go back to God the second day. But the Benjamites came out to oppose them, cut down another 18,000 Israelites. Can you believe that? Let's see. So then they went up and sat weeping before the Lord. You wonder why the Lord allowed that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he didn't want them to go to war, but they wanted to. So the Lord responds, go in verse 28 of chapter 3. Go and I will give them into your hands. Then they have a little strategy. They set an ambush and they draw the Benjamite army out. And they thought they were going to be successful, but it didn't work. And they surrounded, basically, come in from use a little military strategy. And so the fight is on. And the fighting was so heavy that the Benjamites didn't realize how near disaster was. The Lord defeated Benjamin, and on that day, the Israelites struck down 25,100 Benjamites, all armed with sword. Well, that was basically their whole army, because they had started with 26,000. 25,100 are gone on that one day. And evidently, 300 more are on a different day, because they end up with 600. End up with 600 men. And so, and they're hiding in a rock and then, kind of a mountain area. And that's the story of these chapters. There's one more aspect to it that we'll get to. But I just wanted to stop there and point out, why are these 3 chapters in the Bible? And I think this is the answer God wanted to preserve for us, and anybody who's reading this, why the tribe of Benjamin was so small. Because they're reduced here from 600 men, less 600 men of fighting age. So anyway, that's where we're at. But the Israelites were very sad about this when they took time to think about it. And maybe that's a suggestion that they should have thought about more of it, thought more about it to begin with, but they didn't. So they began to say, well, the tribe of Benjamin is just going to go away because we got 600 men here. They don't have any families or anything. We've got to find a way to get wives to them. That's their strategy. So the tribe of Benjamin can be, at least somewhat restored. And what's their strategy?
Weird, because the women just didn't have any kind of.
Yeah, that's another point in these chapters. The status of women is not high.
Very low.
They're more like possessions,
Yeah, like the
You
girl.
just shove your concubine out the door.
Yeah.
So their strategy, they had taken a vow. We talked about a rash vow in the case of Jephthah. These fellows had taken a vow and said, nobody is going to marry, nobody from any of the other tribes is going to marry somebody from Benjamin.
When did they say that?
Well, we learn of it, chapter 21, verse 1. The men of Israel had taken an oath at Mizpah, probably kind of when they started it, but it's mentioned here later. Taking about, not one of us will give his daughter in marriage to a Benjamite. So they can't just find wives for these 600 guys. What are they going to do? Well, they they said, well, we had issued a call for everybody to join us in this war against the Benjamites. But is there anybody that didn't come? Yes, they look around now and they find out the people from the land, from the city of Jabesh Gilead. There's one city where they didn't send guys, to join in the war. So they should have done that, or they were supposed to have done it. So what do you do? Well, they didn't show up. Let's go to Jabesh Gilead and we'll wipe them out. So that was their solution. And when they did that, they found out, after they got rid of the men of Jabesh Gilead, there were 400 unmarried women that were there. And so they gave them to the 600 Benjamite guys.
Hard times.
But that didn't do it, right? There's a 400 women and 600 men. There's going to be conflict. Anyway, so what's their next solution? They got to get 200 more women. And
They kidnapped women from Shiloh,
yeah,
another town.
I wonder if those women knew this was gonna happen,
you wonder.
they dancing around, and then suddenly they kidnap. And
There's
their
a
fathers don't chase the kidnappers. What the heck?
So there's a festival, and these women are celebrating, And so the solution to the problem is when these women are running around, you Benjamite guys that don't have wives yet, you come and grab one. So they do that 200. And so the 200 women, and that brings up the 600 Benjamites, and they now have 600 wives. And so the tribe continues. And I think that's why these 3 chapters are there. But it illustrates what we read at the very final verse. In those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did as he saw fit. And so that's what those chapters illustrate. It was a very depraved time. It was a time when there was no central authority to stand up for the Lord's principles. People were just rushing out to war and battle, killing each other, killing the people from Jabesh Gilead, killing the Benjamites, getting killed themselves. You wonder what, like the other tribes, lost 18,000. There's 18,000 wives. They don't have husbands anymore. But anyway, that's how the book of Judges concludes. And so we finally got to the end of the book of Judges. Why did the Israelites attack the Benjamites? For harboring sinners. How was the tribe of Benjamin preserved? Through this strategies of finding 600 women. Interesting, in chapter 21, verse 15, the people grieved for Benjamin because the Lord had made a gap in the tribes of Israel. Kind of a strange way to put it, because it wasn't the Lord's. I would say it wasn't the Lord's intent. Maybe that's just the way that they put it. But it seems that they've kind of got a skewed vision of things. So anyway, that's the story of the last 5 chapters of the book of Judges.
This terrible killing reminds me of the cartels. He was told that they killed for terrible reasons.
Yes. In many parts of the world, that type of situation, people killing. I mean, we have enough of it here in the city of Chicago, but it's worse in some other places. So it's a terrible situation. But again, faith in God will, if people obey God, that won't happen. So, we got a minute left. How many judges does the Bible name? Well, I'm sorry.
I think on the last episode that we just learned, we have to learn a lot from it. If we compare what's happened to Benjamin and the New Testament right now, it's quite concluded something that we Christians should learn today from it. Because this is a family from God-choosing family.
Yes.
Benjamin, a God-choosing family. And he allowed his own people wipe them up because of what they did. And they decided not to bring the perpetrators out or to give them out for punishment.
Yes.
Today, in our Christianity, what is that? What do we have to learn from that? If you receive today, Jesus Christ is not going to wipe us out physically with war or this kind of no, but he gives us a spiritual mandate that we should learn from those things. When he gives a chance, when somebody did this, he go against me. If you know somebody like that, know how to comfort that person, do your best. If that person decided not to go away or do away with those characters, the church has something to do about it.
Withdraw.
Otherwise,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You can't tolerate evil in your midst. And Jesus, through Paul, has given us a way to deal with that. But it involves a tough thing, confrontation. That's one of the toughest things to go to someone and say, we love you in Christ, but you're making a mistake. But if they won't listen, you have to step away. Now with killing them, you hope that brings them back. Anyway,
How many judges were there?
yes, sir.
How many judges are named? The answer to the question, I didn't catch it.
We didn't answer it yet.
Oh.
Well, he put 13 on the back of his, so that's what I'm counting.
So how many we got?
Well, I passed out that chart called the 12 Judges of Israel from Othniel through Samson. Some of them we have a few chapters about, some of them just mentioned in the verse. So there's 12, but are there any judges that aren't mentioned in the book of Judges?
Are you talking?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who are they? Well, we're going to get right to them pretty quickly. There's one, Samuel is a famous leader who was a judge, and he worked for another man who was that? Eli. So those are the two men who were judges that aren't mentioned in the book of Judges. They're mentioned in the book of 1 Samuel.
Total of 14.
14, as far as I know. Maybe you can find some. Okay.
Before the monarchy.
Yes, yes,
Were you saying there's some after the monarchy?
no.
Well, David is considered a judge.
Oh,
I don't
Well,
know.
the people say, we want a king who will be, who will
okay.
be judge.
So, next is our, we'll study the book of Ruth. And here's the questions that we'll be looking at next week. Hopefully you're all
Yeah,
here.
thank you for coming.
Yeah, nice to have you with us.
Well, you can come again.
Yeah, come when you can.
Are you new in Chicago? You live in this area?
No,
No.
I just been.
Oh, okay, I thought you were visiting
You
earlier.
look so familiar.
And it's so thick.
It is a big paper. It's thick paper.
Yeah. Costco.
It's better.
The Costco paper. Okay.
Michelle, you could tell him that the post office is hiring. And they have a large deaf community post office.
Oh, boy.
So is this recorded online or something?
Question, was that recorded? Your class?
Oh,
Yes.
is it, somebody hit record?
Yeah, I hit record.
Oh, okay.
And I did too.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, when you hit it, it might have turned
It
it
should
off.
be on YouTube,
Northwest
you know,
Church
in
of
a
Christ.
little while.
Yeah,
Go to YouTube, Northwest Church of Christ.
yeah.
Our morning service is on there as well as the class.
And Wednesday night.
Yeah, well,